The first thing I noticed was the cashier's hand on my wrist. It wasn't rough, just firm enough to stop me from grabbing the little sheet cake I'd saved for. He leaned over the counter and whispered almost like a breath, "Are you Linda Carter? Daniel's mom?" My voice failed me, so I just nodded. If you're listening to this, please like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment about where you're tuning in from. The harsh lights of Miller's Market buzzed above, washing everyone in that sickly glow. The cashier, he said his name was Kevin Brooks, warned me quietly about Emily's family, about how they spent freely while calling my son for help every month. His eyes carried the weight of someone who'd seen too much. Then just like that he let go and rang me up as if nothing had happened. "That'll be $18.75, ma'am," he said, sliding the cake into a box. I handed over a 20, fingers trembling. That cake cost me a week of careful budgeting, but Daniel's birthday deserved it. Kevin leaned closer, still soft-voiced. "I've seen what they do. Your son deserves better." I pushed through the side door into the cold Cincinnati wind, trying to breathe. The parking lot rattled with carts and car engines, a child crying as a balloon floated upward. I should have gone straight to Daniel's car, but curiosity pressed on me like a stone. I circled around the dock and crouched by the dumpsters, just to see if the warning was truth or gossip. Moments later, Emily's father, Mark Johnson, strode out with 3 glossy black bags marked Gucci. He wasn't weighed down by bills, he moved easy, confident. A shiny new SUV chirped at his key fob. He loaded the bags with care, then answered a call, smiling. "Yeah, Emily will love the purse. Don't worry about the cost. Daniel just sent another check for Linda's medication. We're covered." My stomach dropped. I'm 68, a retired nurse from a small clinic here in Cincinnati, and I've pinched pennies my whole life to make sure Daniel had enough. My arthritis flared, but I stayed frozen, watching him laugh. "Daniel married Emily 3 years ago. At first I thought she was just reserved. Her father was polite, her mother asked about my health. But soon the requests began, stories about rent, medicine, car repairs. Always urgent, always expensive. Daniel hates to see anyone suffer. So do I. That's how I raised him after Michael died when Daniel was 7. Double shifts, 3 outfits on repeat, every penny stretched. I still remember his graduation from the University of Michigan. My proudest day. He landed a good job in tech, bought a small house with a yard, and seemed settled. Then Emily came along, polished and perfect, laughter like wind chimes. Daniel glowed around her, happier than I'd ever seen. The wedding came quickly, elegant but clearly costly. Daniel insisted Emily's parents were covering things. At the rehearsal dinner, Mark's handshake was strong, Linda's jewelry tinkled as she kissed my cheek. They called Daniel the son they never had. It all seemed sweet, until after the honeymoon, when Emily called crying that her father had lost his job. They needed help with the mortgage. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Of course," he said, checkbook already open. The requests kept coming. Medicine, car repairs, a leaky roof. Daniel sent money every time. "They'd do the same for us," he assured me. But I saw the changes. The dark circles under his eyes, the constant phone calls, the way he checked his account with quiet dread. My son, once carefree, now weighed down by bills that weren't even his. When I suggested Daniel and Emily come to my place for dinner to save money, Daniel looked embarrassed. "Emily prefers eating out," he admitted. "She works too hard to spend her evenings in someone else's kitchen." The words stung, but I let them pass. I'd always put Daniel's happiness first. Then Emily called in tears about Mark's costly heart medication. That night I slipped $60 from my grocery envelope into their mailbox. The very next morning, I saw Mark drive by in a sharp suit and polished shoes. I told myself it must be borrowed or a gift. I didn't want to think badly of family. Later, Emily bragged about a fancy steakhouse dinner in downtown Cincinnati. She claimed friends had paid. But on her social media I saw Mark raising a glass of wine, captioned, "Treating Dad the way he deserves." The contradictions piled up like bricks. New curtains, Mark's watch, Emily's pearl earrings she swore were fake. And then those glossy Gucci bags sliding into the trunk of that SUV. The cashier had been right. Something didn't add up. That night Daniel called, voice tight. "Mom, I hate to ask, but do you have any extra cash? Emily's dad needs tests insurance won't cover." My hand tightened on the phone. I lied gently, "Honey, my prescription costs went up. I can't spare it this month." Guilt burned through me, but I knew I had to start keeping records. For the first time in his life I told my son no. I pulled out a small notebook and wrote the date, every detail I'd seen. If I was going to protect Daniel, I needed proof, not suspicions. That Saturday I told Daniel I wanted to go to the farmer's market on Maple Street, but I insisted on taking the bus. From there I walked to a cafe with wide windows. At noon Mark's SUV rolled by, not toward the hardware store he claimed to work at, but straight into Fairfield Country Club. The guard waved him in without a glance. 2 hours later he came out carrying a leather briefcase, humming as if life were effortless. That evening walking home I overheard 2 women on Pine Avenue. One mentioned Emily's emerald dress at the mall, at least $200. The other added she bought French creams too, her granddaughter saying Emily was a top customer. Their voices held irritation, not gossip. They beg for money, one said, while living like royalty. My nephew works with Daniel. Poor man's working himself to death. My chest tightened. The picture was coming into focus. The next day Daniel called again. Emily's parents are behind on their mortgage. That was the 3rd time this year. Daniel, have you checked? Seen the bills? Talked to the bank? His voice hardened. Emily would never lie to me. Neither would her parents. I had pushed too far too soon. I hope you're right, I said softly, fearing I'd damaged our bond. But I couldn't forget Mark's laughter as he loaded those bags. 2 days later I found Kevin Brooks at Miller's Market. He looked around before speaking. My cousin Carol dated Mark Johnson once. He borrowed thousands for fake business deals, then vanished. People don't change, especially con artists. Kevin's eyes darkened. I've seen them buy champagne here the same day my friend at First National Bank said they cashed a check from your son. My stomach twisted. The pieces were falling into place. Kevin Brooks told me something that shook me. The Johnsons don't even have a mortgage. They paid off their house years ago. Whatever money your son's sending, it isn't going to any bank. I steadied myself against the shelf. Why tell me this? I asked. His eyes softened. Because my grandmother was conned by people she trusted. Nobody believed her until it was too late. I won't stand by and watch that happen again. I thanked him, bought a few things I didn't need, and left with my mind racing. No mortgage, no overdue bills, just carefully crafted lies to drain my son. That night I couldn't sleep. I paced my small apartment, notebook in hand, each entry growing heavier. Kevin's words, the country club, the Gucci bags, the overheard gossip. Together they painted a picture of deliberate deception. Then just after 11 p.m. my phone rang. Daniel's voice was tight. Mom, I'm so sorry, but Emily's dad is in the hospital. They think it's his heart. We need a deposit for tests and I've maxed out my credit card. Do you have anything saved? My throat closed. I knew this was another story. Which hospital? I asked. St. Mary's, he said quickly, relief in his voice. Emily's with him now. I'll meet you there, I answered firmly. Don't worry about the money yet. Let's make sure he's okay. He tried to protest, but I cut him off. Family shows up in person, not just with cash. I took a taxi I couldn't afford to St. Mary's. Memories of my nursing days came back with the antiseptic smell and squeaking shoes on the polished floors. Daniel met me at the entrance, pale with worry. Rachel's inside with Dad. They say he collapsed. I followed him toward the curtained rooms. But before we reached them, I spotted Linda Johnson at a vending machine, calmly choosing a candy bar. Her hair and makeup were flawless, not the look of a panicked wife. When she saw us, she feigned distress. You didn't have to come, Linda. Of course I did, I replied evenly. How's Mark? The doctors are with him now. It's been so frightening, she said, voice rehearsed. I asked which cardiologist was treating him. She faltered. I don't recall. When she mentioned insurance demanding a $500 deposit, alarm bells went off. In 25 years as a nurse, I'd never seen true emergencies delayed for payment. I offered to check with billing. Panic flickered in her eyes. That's not necessary. Emily's handling it. I went straight to the nurse's station. Can you confirm if a Mark Johnson was admitted tonight? The clerk typed, then frowned. No record of him. No one by that name in the last 24 hours. Cold certainty washed over me. No emergency, no tests, just another scheme. When I returned, Emily had joined them, eyes red with mascara smudges that looked almost staged. Dad's resting now. They're moving him upstairs. I met her gaze. That's interesting, Emily. Because the hospital has no record of Mark Johnson being admitted. Silence spread like shattered glass. Emily's face froze, her eyes darting to her mother, then to Daniel. There must be a mistake, she stammered. We've been here for hours. No mistake, I said softly. You're lying to my son. Daniel stepped forward, torn between confusion and anger. Mom, what are you saying? That Mark isn't here. This is just another way to get money from you. Linda snapped. That's ridiculous. But her trembling hand betrayed her. Then show us, I pressed. Which room? Which doctor? Daniel turned to Emily, his voice breaking. Is Dad really here? Just tell me the truth. The tension stretched thin. And then from behind us a familiar voice. Linda, sorry I'm late. The meeting ran long. We all turned. Mark Johnson strode in, briefcase in hand, looking perfectly healthy in an expensive suit. Not a hospital gown in sight. He froze when he saw us, realizing instantly that the lie had unraveled. In that moment the Johnsons' house of cards collapsed, and so did my son's trust. The drive home from St. Mary's was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Daniel gripped the wheel so tightly his knuckles whitened. Streetlights swept shadows across his face as he stared straight ahead, his world reforming around a brutal truth. I should have known, Daniel finally whispered, voice hollow. 3 years of fake emergencies. How much have I given them? He guessed 20, maybe 30,000, then admitted he stopped keeping track. The pain in his voice cut through me. I had protected him from so much as a child, but I couldn't protect him from this betrayal. What do I do now? He asked as we pulled up to my apartment. I told him firmly, you get some rest. Tomorrow we start gathering evidence. We need facts, not just suspicions. He nodded slowly, the engineer in him clinging to logic. He said he'd stay at his friend Chris's place for a while. I watched him drive away, my heart breaking with the helpless pain only a mother knows. The next morning I turned to Margaret Lewis, a retired bank manager in my building. Over coffee I explained everything. Her frown deepened with every detail. Con artists, she said flatly. And they're using your son like an ATM. I told her I needed to prove it. Margaret promised to ask contacts at First National Bank about mortgage fraud patterns. Meanwhile, talk to that cashier again. Kevin, wasn't it? He seems to know a lot about their spending. That afternoon I returned to Miller's Market. Kevin's eyes darkened when I told him about the hospital lie. Not surprised, he muttered. After his shift we met in the coffee shop next door. My cousin Carol wasn't Mark's only victim, he began. He's conned at least 3 others with fake emergencies. Always just small enough to avoid police. But with Daniel it's bigger. I stressed that I needed evidence. Kevin showed me a spreadsheet he'd been keeping. Dates, purchases, receipts for champagne and gourmet foods. All while Emily called Daniel about unpaid bills. He even offered to pull copies from their system. His voice hardened. My grandmother lost everything to people like them. I won't let it happen again. He added one more piece. His friend Eric at the bank had said the Johnsons applied for a home equity loan. If their house is paid off, they're trying to pull cash from it. Could be planning something bigger. The weight of it all sank in. On the bus ride home, Daniel called first. I've been going through my bank statements. Mom, I've given them over $25,000 in just 2 years. My breath caught. He was building a spreadsheet, lining up each check with the supposed emergencies. His voice cracked. Emily keeps calling, saying it's a misunderstanding. But I think I've been a fool. Not a fool, I said softly. Just someone who trusted too much. We'll get to the truth. Over the next 3 days we worked like detectives. Margaret confirmed through property records that the Johnsons' home in Westerville had been paid off for nearly 5 years. Kevin sent me receipts showing luxury purchases on the same days Daniel had wired money for utility bills. And the strongest blow came from Karen Mitchell, their neighbor. At first hesitant, she finally said, I've lived next door 8 years. They've never shown any hardship. They renovated their kitchen with top-of-the-line appliances last year. And they take 2, sometimes 3 vacations a year. Caribbean cruises, European tours. The evidence was piling up. Piece by piece, the Johnsons' lies were unraveling. Karen Mitchell told me the Johnsons' lives were anything but modest. Mark golfed weekly at Fairfield Country Club, Linda flaunted new jewelry at every gathering, and just last month they hosted an engagement party with a live band and open bar. That same week, Daniel had sent them $1,200 for plumbing repairs. When I asked if she'd provide a written statement, Karen hesitated. They can be vindictive. Linda runs the neighborhood association. I assured her it was about protecting my son. After a long pause, she agreed. I'll email you something. It isn't right what they're doing. By week's end, we had a thick file. Bank transfers aligned with luxury purchases, property records disproving mortgage claims, witness accounts, and even Emily's own social media posts showing fine dining and new designer items during weeks Daniel worked overtime to cover their so-called emergencies. It wasn't sloppy budgeting. It was a system built to bleed him dry. That Friday, I met Daniel at his friend Chris's apartment. We spread the evidence across the dining table. He tapped the folder of Kevin's receipts. 3 years of lies. I asked what he planned to do. I need to confront Emily. Get her to admit it. His voice faltered at the weight of it. I offered to come, but he shook his head. This is mine to do. But first, one last check. He pulled up their joint account, showing small but regular deposits, $200 or $300, from Mark to Emily's personal account, always after Daniel sent money. Kickbacks, he said grimly. They've been giving her a cut. The betrayal was deeper than I'd imagined. I squeezed his hand, but his face had already hardened. I'm meeting her tomorrow. She thinks it's reconciliation. Instead, she'll see all of this. I warned him not to meet alone. He promised Chris would be nearby and the meeting would be in a public cafe. Still, unease gnawed at me. People like the Johnsons didn't let go of their golden goose without a fight. 2 weeks later, the fallout came. Daniel confronted Emily with the evidence. Her confession was more excuse than remorse. Claims of pressure from her parents, torn loyalties. But Daniel wasn't swayed, not after seeing the deposits. They separated and he began meeting with a divorce attorney. The Johnsons went quiet, too quiet, which only sharpened my worry. Then the call came. Linda Johnson phoned me one Thursday evening, her voice dripping sugar. Linda, we feel awful about the misunderstanding. Mark and I would love to invite you to Sunday lunch. Nothing fancy, just family, just us. Every instinct screamed no, but curiosity tugged harder. After talking with Daniel, who urged caution but agreed it might bring closure, I accepted. That Sunday I rode a taxi out to Westerville. The lawns were trimmed, porches spotless, leaves raked into neat piles. The Johnson house stood tall with white columns and dark green shutters, a pristine colonial flanked by expensive cars. Linda welcomed me in a silk blouse, perfume clinging to her hug. Inside gleamed like a magazine spread, fresh paint, leather sofa, crystal vases, roses too perfect for a grocery store. A massive flat screen covered the wall. Nothing about it spoke of hardship. In the kitchen, the renovation was clear. Granite counters, stainless appliances, a professional espresso machine, even a wine fridge. Linda's diamond bracelet sparkled as she poured coffee. Then Mark entered in a cashmere sweater and pressed slacks, smiling like a man who'd never struggled. At the dining table, Linda presented imported cheeses, cured meats, and roasted lamb. Mark poured wine from a $60 bottle I'd recognized instantly. A gift from a friend, he said smoothly when he caught me looking. I forced a polite smile while inside, every polished detail screamed the same truth. This was no family in need. Each time they mentioned the money Daniel had sent, Mark and Linda Johnson shared a glance so quick most would have missed it. But I always noticed. Linda, Mark said at last, setting down his fork, we did exaggerate some of our difficulties, but we truly needed help at times. Medical bills, home repairs. It happens. So expensive, I asked lightly, that you needed $25,000 from my son while renovating your kitchen and vacationing in the Caribbean? His smile tightened. Our finances are complicated. Assets, investments. Sometimes cash flow is a problem. And the mortgage payments Daniel sent? For a house that's been paid off. I pressed. Linda Johnson stepped in smoothly. We refinanced. Records probably aren't updated yet. Lie after lie. And the deposits to Emily's account? I asked. Mark's composure slipped. We sometimes give Rachel money. What parents don't? I leaned forward. Why invite me here? Surely not just to deny what we all know is true. Mark's tone shifted to business. We want to put this behind us. Emily loves Daniel. With your influence, maybe he'll reconsider the divorce. You want me to convince him that years of deceit were just mistakes? I asked flatly. Patricia bristled. We helped each other as families do. Mark's expression hardened. What exactly do you want, Linda? Restitution? A payment plan? I stood slowly. This isn't about money. It's about 3 years of betrayal. No repayment erases that. His mask cracked, anger flashing. You're making a mistake. Divorce can get messy. Rachel has her version of events, and it won't flatter Daniel. My blood ran cold. If you try to ruin my son's reputation, you'll find I'm not so easy to manipulate. Patricia rose, hospitality gone. This is between Daniel and Emily. Stay out of it. You made it my business the moment you started lying to bleed him dry, I said. Mark stepped closer, looming. And what do you think you can do, Linda? You're a retired nurse living on Social Security. We have resources. I met his gaze. I raised my son alone after his father died. I worked double shifts, put myself through school. I've faced worse than a pair of con artists. For a moment, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone. Tell Daniel to have his lawyer contact ours, he said coldly. We won't discuss this further. I walked out of their spotless Westerville home more certain than ever. The Johnsons weren't just opportunists. They were predators carefully targeting Daniel for his generous nature. Halfway down the street, I realized my hands were shaking, not with fear but with anger. As I waited for my taxi, a woman tending her garden caught my eye. Silver hair, practical ponytail. I recognized her. One of the women I'd overheard weeks earlier discussing Emily's shopping habits. Excuse me, I said gently. I'm Linda Carter, Daniel's mother. She introduced herself as Karen Mitchell. I've heard of you through Patricia, she said, tone cautious. And in 8 years of living next door, I asked, have you ever seen them struggle with bills or medical costs? Karen gave a sharp laugh. The Johnsons? Hardly. Mark brags about his investments. Linda shows off jewelry every month. Struggling isn't a word I'd use. I explained quietly how they drained thousands from Daniel through false emergencies. Understanding dawned. That explains the conversations I've overheard. Transfers from Daniel, followed by their laughter. I asked if she'd be willing to speak to Daniel. Karen hesitated, then straightened her shoulders. My nephew was conned once. Nobody believed him. I'll help. The Johnsons have bullied this neighborhood long enough. We exchanged numbers as my taxi pulled up. When I glanced back, I saw Mark watching from his window. His expression was dark. The confrontation at the Johnsons' house had confirmed my worst fears. They weren't careless or opportunistic. They were calculated con artists. And now they were preparing to punish Daniel for uncovering their scheme. Protecting him meant more than shielding his finances. It meant defending his reputation against the smear campaign they were already plotting. When I returned home, Daniel was waiting outside my door looking troubled. Mom, I found something worse, he said the moment I let him in. He opened his laptop and pulled up a folder of old emails. Emily had used his computer and forgotten to fully delete her messages. What we found was devastating. Email after email spelled out their plan. Staged emergencies, discussions on how much to request without raising suspicion, tallies of how much they drained and how much more they could take. One message read, Daniel got his annual bonus, $5,000 this time. I told him Dad's car broke down again. He didn't even question it. The usual split. The usual split was clear. 60% to her parents, 40% to Emily. But the most chilling email was recent, sent after Daniel confronted her. He knows everything. Claims to have proof. We need to move to Plan B. Dad can file the lawsuit next. With what Daniel's shared, we have enough. He'll have to settle. One big payout instead of monthly transfers. Might be better this way. I felt sick. They were plotting to sue Daniel's company, using confidential information he'd once shared with Emily in trust. Even a frivolous lawsuit could wreck his career. Daniel's face was grim. She's been collecting details for months. Security policies, client lists. If they file, it could ruin me. This wasn't just theft anymore. It was an attack on his future. We need to act fast, I said, my resolve hardening. They've escalated, so we need to stay a step ahead. As the evening light faded, we began to map out our response. We wouldn't be victims again. The Johnsons had underestimated us for the last time. By Monday morning, my determination was like crystal. After a sleepless night strategizing with Daniel, I was ready. We weren't just preparing for another confrontation. We were preparing for a war to protect his life, his career, and everything he had built. Daniel had alerted his company's legal department first thing that morning, securing their support. I sat in my small kitchen, waiting for word on whether the first part of our plan had worked. The clock ticked steadily, each sound reminding me how fast the Johnsons were moving. At 10:15, Margaret Lewis called. I spoke with my contact at First National Bank. Based on the documents we provided, they flagged the Johnsons' accounts. The home equity loan they applied for is on hold. Relief swept through me. That loan, 70% of their home's value, had been their way to fund a lawsuit against Daniel's company and possibly vanish afterward. Margaret added grimly, Mark stormed into the bank demanding answers. Security had to escort him out. I could picture his red, furious face. For the first time, his schemes were being blocked. Margaret warned the bank couldn't stall forever without charges. But it bought us time. By noon, Kevin Brooks texted. His cousin Carol and 2 others were ready to provide statements about money Mark had borrowed and never repaid. Then Karen Mitchell let me know the neighborhood association had called a special meeting over the Johnsons' threatening behavior. Piece by piece, we were dismantling their facade. At 2 p.m., Daniel called. Emily just tried to withdraw all $15,000 from our joint savings. Claimed it was for her dad's heart condition. The same lie they'd used at the hospital, now at the bank. How much did you allow? I asked. 500. Enough to stall her without funding their plans. The bank manager will alert me to any more attempts. Good thinking. He added that his company's lawyers were sending cease and desist letters that afternoon, and he'd scheduled a meeting with the district attorney for tomorrow. Everything's backed up in 3 places, he assured me. Will you come with me? Of course, I said. We'll bring everything. We weren't seeking vengeance. We needed an official record even if prosecution didn't follow. That evening, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Carter? This is Linda Johnson. My pulse quickened, but I kept calm. Yes, Linda. Her voice was soft, almost pleading. William and I realize we've made mistakes. We'd like to make amends. Pay back whatever Daniel thinks we owe, maybe a payment plan. Surely we can resolve this without lawyers. The reference to lawyers confirmed they knew about tomorrow's meeting. Likely someone at the bank had tipped them off. I appreciate the offer, I said evenly, but I think we're past private arrangements. Her tone sharpened with desperation. You don't understand what this could do to our family. Our standing in the community, William's position at the club. We could lose everything. You should have thought of that before systematically defrauding my son, I replied, steady as stone. Defraud. Linda Johnson's voice rose. That's a harsh word for family helping each other through tough times. Is that what you call it? I asked. Inventing emergencies to bleed my son dry, giving Emily kickbacks, planning a lawsuit with confidential information Daniel trusted her with? Her sharp intake of breath told me they hadn't expected us to know about the lawsuit. We have the emails, I continued evenly. Everyone. Your requests, the bonus splits, the plans to use Daniel's company secrets. Silence stretched before Patricia's voice hardened. What do you want? I want what any mother wants, for my son to be safe and respected. In practical terms, full restitution, signed admissions, a binding promise never to use Daniel's information, and for you to leave his life. That's extreme, she sputtered. No, Patricia, I said. Extreme would be the fraud charges the district attorney is reviewing, or the civil suit Daniel's lawyer is preparing. She faltered. I'll need to discuss this with William. You have until noon tomorrow, I replied. After that we move forward legally. When I hung up, my hands shook, not from fear but from adrenaline. I had avoided conflict all my life, but now standing firm was the only path to justice. Moments later, Daniel texted. Emily called. Her parents want to meet tomorrow. Should we go? Yes, I typed back. Public place. Bring Chris as a witness. The next morning I arrived early at the coffee shop Daniel chose, selecting a table with a clear view of both doors. Daniel and Chris joined me minutes later. At 10:07 the Johnsons entered, Mark leading, confidence cracked. Linda clutching her handbag, Emily trailing behind, eyes darting. Mark's greeting was curt. His gaze dismissed Chris. Daniel's reply was steady. Chris is here as a witness. Transparency, given recent events. Mark sat jaw tight. Patricia spoke with you. Let's discuss terms. Not terms, I corrected gently. Requirements. Non-negotiable. Daniel placed a folder on the table. These outline everything. Restitution of $27,453, admissions of fraud, confidentiality agreements, and complete severance after the divorce. Mark's face darkened. This is extortion. No, Daniel said calmly. This is consequence. The law calls it theft by deception. Wire fraud, 2 felonies. Patricia squeezed Mark's arm. We'll return the money. But admissions? That could ruin us. You should have thought of that before exploiting my son, I said. Emily's voice cracked. Daniel, please. We asked for help more than we should have, but we're family. Families make mistakes. Daniel looked at her squarely. Was it a mistake when you wrote about splitting my bonus? When you forwarded my company's confidential files? When you planned to sue for a payout that could ruin my career? Emily's face drained. You read my emails. You left them on my laptop, he replied. Not very careful for someone running a scheme. Mark leaned forward, dropping all pretense. If you press charges, we'll fight. Our word against yours. Yes, you have emails, but we have explanations. Witnesses. Resources you can't imagine. His hand trembled on the table. For the first time I saw fear. Actually, I said quietly, we have more than emails. We have statements from your other victims, I said, sliding a folder onto the table. Carol Adams, who loaned you $5,000 you never repaid. David Harris, who invested in your fake business venture. Karen Mitchell, who's documented your lavish lifestyle while you begged my son for money. I leaned in. We also have proof of Emily receiving kickbacks, property records showing your house was paid off years ago, and grocery receipts for champagne bought the same day you claimed you couldn't pay utilities. With each detail, the Johnsons seemed to shrink. Most importantly, I added, we have the district attorney's attention. She believes there's enough for organized fraud. It wasn't the full truth. We only had an appointment with her office, but the effect was immediate. Linda Johnson's composure cracked. Mark, we need to consider their terms. His face had drained to gray. We don't have that kind of money. The home equity loan was denied. Yes, I said. We know. But you can liquidate assets. The club membership, the jewelry, the European vacation you've booked for next month. Emily's head snapped up. You're still planning Italy? You told me we were broke. For a moment, I saw the shock of her own betrayal, though my sympathy lasted only a heartbeat. Mark's shoulders slumped. Fine. We'll sign. We'll pay it back. Just keep this quiet. Daniel's voice was steady. You have 3 days to transfer the full amount. Sign documents to my attorney by 5 p.m. tomorrow. After that, all communication goes through legal channels until the divorce is final. If you comply, criminal charges won't be pursued. But if you ever contact us again, or use anything from my company, all evidence goes straight to the district attorney. The Johnsons exchanged a look, then Mark gave a stiff nod. We accept. He signed the preliminary agreement and they rose to leave. Emily lingered, eyes fixed on the table. I did love you, she whispered. Daniel's expression didn't change. But you loved their lifestyle more. She didn't deny it. She just picked up her purse and followed her parents out. When the door closed, Daniel let out a shaky breath. Is it really over? I reached for his hand. The worst part is done. Now comes the rebuilding. A year later, I sat on a bench in Franklin Park watching October leaves drift through the air. Daniel approached with 2 coffees, Lauren Evans at his side. She laughed at something he said, her gaze warm and easy. Sorry we're late, he called. Faculty meeting ran long. Worth the wait, I smiled, hugging them both. Lauren was a science teacher full of energy and kindness, so different from the cold calculation we'd faced before. Life had shifted into a healthier rhythm. Daniel had earned a promotion after implementing new security systems at work. Lauren's program had received a grant. My own volunteer work had grown into a financial literacy class for seniors. As we sat together, Lauren asked gently, "Have you heard from them?" Daniel shook his head. The The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. Mike's mom says the Johnsons are selling their house in Dublin and moving to Florida. The country club revoked Mark's membership. Their own relatives have cut ties. How do you feel about it now? I asked. He thought for a moment. Relieved. Sad for what could have been if it was real, but mostly grateful. Grateful Mom saw what I didn't. Grateful I found the truth before it ruined me. And grateful I learned to trust my instincts again. Instincts that led me to Lauren. Lauren blushed, sunlight catching her hair. Daniel squeezed my hand. And the money helped too. Once they paid everything back, I cleared my car loan and started saving for a house. I even made sure Mom got $10,000. For all those years she worked double shifts to put me through school. That gift transformed my retirement. I fixed my old car, replaced worn furniture, even took a trip to visit my sister in Arizona. For the first time in decades, I wasn't counting pennies with dread. As we strolled together through the park, crisp leaves crunching underfoot, I felt peace settle in. The Johnsons had paid back every cent, and though justice came at a cost, we had reclaimed something far greater: freedom, trust, and the promise of a brighter future. After moving out, Emily sent Daniel one letter. Half apology, half excuse. She claimed she'd been raised to see money as security and never learned the difference between needs and wants. Daniel read it once, then filed it away. Some betrayals cut too deep for words to fix. Mom, Mrs. Reynolds from my school asked if you'd give a talk on financial safety for seniors, Lauren said, breaking into my thoughts. She loved your presentation at the community center. I smiled. I'd be happy to. What started as healing for myself had become a mission. Teaching others how to avoid what happened to Daniel. My Don't Be Deceived workshops now had waiting lists. Daniel grinned. Mom's a local celebrity. As we left Franklin Park that afternoon, Daniel cleared his throat. There's something Lauren and I want to ask. They exchanged excited glances. We've been talking about the future, Daniel said, taking her hand. We found a duplex on Maplewood Drive. 2 units with a connecting door. We'd take one side, and we were hoping you'd consider the other. I blinked. You want me next door? Only if you want to, Lauren added quickly. The units are separate, but we'd love to have you close. Especially if we have kids someday. The thoughtfulness brought tears to my eyes. Unlike the Johnsons, who saw family as a resource to drain, Daniel and Lauren saw family as love and support. I'd like to see it, I said softly. Their smiles said everything. That evening, after touring the sunny duplex with its shared garden, I sat in my apartment reflecting. The pain of Emily's betrayal had been brutal. Facing the Johnsons had taken courage I wasn't sure I had. But we'd survived and come out stronger, wiser, closer. My phone chimed with a text from Daniel. Thank you for considering the duplex. And for everything else. I wouldn't be where I am without you. Love you, Mom. I typed back, love you too. Always. As I packed a box of books for the move, I thought of what I'd tell the parents at Lauren's school. That kindness should never mean blindness. That love sometimes means exposing deception rather than preserving illusions. And that trust rebuilt is stronger than trust untested. The Johnsons had underestimated us. They mistook compassion for weakness, never seeing the resilience forged by years of facing hardship together. In the end, it wasn't revenge we won, it was justice. We regained what was stolen, but more importantly, we proved that real love, unlike the counterfeit version the Johnsons offered, can endure even the harshest betrayal and emerge purer, like gold tested by fire. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've been through something like this, share your story in the comments.